Welcome to Super Entrepreneurs Podcast. Today we have with us Karl Hughes. Karl, how are you?
I'm excellent, Shahid. Good to see you.
Oh man, good to see you as well. We're so happy that you came on our show.
Yeah.
So Karl, we always like to start the show with kind of giving the stage to the guests to introduce themselves in their own words, please.
Sure, absolutely. My name is Karl Hughes. I am the founder of a company called Draft.dev. What we do is we create technical marketing content for companies that want to reach software engineers. So it typically looks like web hosting companies or software testing tools, software service tools. When they want to market a product out to software engineers, it can be really tough to reach that audience. So what we do for them is we write really technical, in-depth marketing content that almost supplements their documentation as well as attracts new users and brings in revenue for them. So it's a really weird mix of disciplines. We kind of play in the space of content marketing / software engineering / technical writing. And we kind of do a little bit of work in all those disciplines to get our clients what they need. Super niche business, but it's grown really quickly. And it's just a really in-demand field at the moment.
I always love the niches, right? Like they produce so much better results when you're actually speaking to a specific person, and you guys actually are getting right into their mind about what they do and
right.
marketing.
It's very specific. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And see, here's the thing, like most people would hear me say that description and like, I don't even really understand what that is. But the tiny percentage of your, either listeners or whatever, the 1% out there that says, oh, I need that. That's all I care about, right? Or I want to be the person that everybody thinks about when they think about this one really specific thing. And absolutely, it's contributed a lot to our growth, but it also allows us to stand out as a service provider.
Oh, for sure. And your background is software as well?
Yeah, I spent about 10 years in venture-funded startups as a software engineer, engineering manager, and then CTO. And so went through the process of building and hiring engineering teams and architecting software and writing software. And on the side, I always liked writing prose as well. I'd write tutorials about what I was learning or just, different tips that I picked up along the way. And what happened was eventually companies started reaching out to me and saying like, hey, would you write something for our blog? Because you know software and you know how to write. And so I'd do that occasionally just for fun. And then COVID hit and the last startup I was working for was starting to kind of hit the rocks. We put the engineering team all down to halftime to save money and just extend the runway a bit. So I started writing more. And then Draft.dev kind of came out of that. I started off just really freelancing essentially. And then within about 6 months, I had started hiring other writers and an editor.
Awesome.
And over the course of 2 years, we've gone from that to like 16 full-time people, about 300 writers, and then 90 clients.
Yeah, so you have that quality, right? You have that ability to put it on paper and just type away. So when you found these people, how did you find them? For example, you obviously put the word out, you interviewed them, right? But you can never find another you, right? So how do you get that quality? You know what I mean? Like how do you get that quality out there for customers?
That's right. So the problem most people, when they approach like a difficult service business like this that's complicated and requires this unique set of skills, what they'll typically try to do is look for unicorns to do exactly what they do. So in other words, I would have had to go look for another me. Problem is, I was too expensive to hire. I had 10 years of engineering experience and leadership experience. It was going to be a multi-six-figure type hire. There's no way I could justify charging clients anywhere near that rate. So what I did was I broke down the jobs into multiple different sub jobs. So there's the research and outlining portion of writing. So a client comes to us and says, we want an article about testing Python software. Great. Let's write a brief and outline. And that's a somewhat technical thing, but you don't have to be the subject matter expert who goes in and actually writes Python code, right? So there's part one. The next part is actually writing the Python code, doing the testing. That needs to be a software engineer, could just be a part-time person. They don't have to be a great writer, because the next step is we find an editor who's going to clean them up and make sure they look really good to the client. So it's sort of the trick of taking people who have specific skill sets in each of these areas and then cordoning the work off so that each of them do their sort of zone of excellence. And that's the way we've scaled it. I mean, we now have like probably a 7-step process basically to produce each piece. So many people touch each one, but it's the only way to produce this stuff at scale and to scale up the operations without your cost scaling just out of whack.
So you must have someone for keyword research as well then, right?
Yeah, so we do some keyword research. We do some, the briefs and outlining. Not all of the content we write is SEO based. It's interesting because this field is so technical. A lot of it can be like more customer centric. So if customers are asking questions like, "Oh, can I use your tool with my Snowflake database that I have over here?" Then we need to write content that answers that question for their support teams, as well as possibly, a new marketing piece. And so there may not be SEO keyword volume for that piece, but it still could be really valuable to the company. So we end up doing kind of a mix of things. But yeah, definitely keyword research is an important part of it.
Yeah, it's an important part. And you mentioned tool. So what do you mean? Like, is it like a website where you go on and then you fill in, you answer some questions, and then you kind of come back with a custom offer? What do you mean by tool?
Yeah, you mean for the way we work with clients?
Yeah.
We have a pretty standard set of offerings. It's almost like a menu. When a client comes on a sales call with us, we'll go through.
Those are the best.
Yeah, it's very productized, and that was very intentional. When I started this, I got really interested in the idea of productized services, which is just kind of taking a service and turning it into a menu so that it looks more like a product. You can sell it in smaller bits, and you can kind of easily define the offering and the process to do it. So that's what how we operate. So, a client comes into a sales call and they get to kind of pick from the menu what they need, and then we have intake forms that get the info we need to plan out and write each piece. We have different feedback systems so that they can, click their satisfaction with each article and get revisions if they need them. And a lot of stuff like that that's like semi-automated so that we can sort of allow our people to spend their effort on the writing, the high quality, the creative work, and the machine can do its part about just transferring, feedback from clients to us, et cetera.
So there is some kind of artificial intelligence incorporated.
I wish it were that sophisticated. It's much more just like automations. It's just making sure that a client doesn't have to, send an email. Instead, they can just click a button on an interface. Things like that essentially save people time, but aren't really much more than automating communication.
Yeah. No, that's good. So do you have like a blog or do you have something that you write consistently where you have members?
So yeah, for the company itself, we do, most of our clients are getting us to write content for their blogs. And so that's where most of our, hundreds of pieces of content a month go out to, is like out to dozens of websites around the internet. So, that's where our content generally goes. Now we also in-house do write content about writing this kind of technical content. And that does bring in a significant amount of traffic, and we actually do a lot of sales just based on that content we write on our blog. So yeah, I mean, it's sort of like if you're a content marketing company and you're not doing your own content marketing, I mean, I think that's a little bit of a misalignment there. So we definitely do, and we get pretty good results from it, depending on what the goals is for each piece.
Well, I got to tell you one thing, Karl, and I whatever comes to mind, whatever flows through me, I ask, just at the moment, but you have a very good voice. So now, do you have a podcast, or do you
Oh,
do you have
wow.
a podcast?
Yeah, well, thank you. No, I do a lot of guesting on podcasts, and I do some webinars, conference talks, a few YouTube videos here and there. I enjoy public speaking. This is actually one of the things that got me into this world, or attracted me to this business, is that I remember in high school taking like a public speaking course and really enjoying it. It was one of those like influential courses in my education, where I realized that most people are really afraid of public speaking and struggle with it. And for me, it was exciting. It was not the fear thing that most people get. I mean, I get nervous like anybody, but I definitely don't feel overcome by it. And it's always something I've gotten through. So I used to, a lot of conference speaking and things like that. But no, I haven't started a podcast yet. It's on my possible to-do list for next year, but we'll see
definitely.
if I get together.
Yeah, I definitely think you should. And if you ever need help, that's what we do. We help people with that. So just let me know, get in touch with us, because
Absolutely.
you already have the foundation, the voice. Voice is there's something about a voice, it connects to hearts, that vibration. And when you have a specific type of voice, you don't want to leave that out, because that could make a huge difference in your business and the number of people you're serving, right? Because you do quality work, you need more people to know about it.
Yeah. This is actually an interesting one. I'd be curious to get your thoughts on this. Like, as a business owner, I actually intentionally try to remove myself from a lot of marketing. And the reason is that as our company has grown, I don't want the company's growth to be dependent on me 100%. I mean, like, I want to contribute to it, but I also want to look at this more in the owner investor mindset of how do I build an organization that thrives when I step away. And so for me, this is actually part of the reason I haven't started a podcast, is that I haven't wanted to lock myself in and commit to the being in the seat running those podcasts. So I probably would end up bringing in other people to help host it and eventually replacing myself. Because my philosophy on starting a company is I should be able to, by the end of, this journey, step away and the thing keeps running and growing without me. That's the ultimate goal. So next month, I'm taking a month off for paternity leave. I'm going to shut down email, not answer my phone, and just see what happens. And I've got great people in place that they're going to take care of 99.9% of things. And there'll be a couple fires when I come back, and they'll be fine. But that's a huge personal KPI for me, is how long can I step away from the business and things still run?
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's a great way to do it, right? You actually put them in the fire and see how they do, because that's how you realize who's up for it. Everyone in an organization, you'll see the leaders, they'll start popping up. During that time, when you take that step, is excellent move.
Absolutely.
But obviously, you already have the team people. You already have the people that you're working with. You can slowly even start now, right? Like, you can actually kind of move away, even be there and not be there.
Definitely. Yeah. It's it's definitely been a gradual process, right? I haven't, I'm not going to, it's not literally throwing them into the fire and good luck. Yeah. It's more every week I look at my to-do list and I see which of these things could my team be doing, and why am I still doing it? Is it really critical that Karl is the one in that driver's seat doing that specific task? Or is this something someone else, like my director of operations or account management, could do? And that's really important, I think. I think this is something that a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with, is letting things go, because they're always going to be slightly better at those things. I mean, when I gave up running the account management team, of course, I was the best at customer support because I loved our customers. I knew every one of them. I had every single sales call up to that point. So of course I in the expert who could tell you how to answer every request from a customer. But ultimately I became a bottleneck where that team couldn't grow and couldn't answer questions fast enough because I'm the one they're always going to, and I was busy with other things. And so it's I don't want to be, I'm okay bringing someone in who is not quite as good at first. They will get better. They will, eventually surpass me, because it frees up the bottleneck. And it's just also let the mindset of letting people fail and learn from that failure is huge. And I think I learned a lot when I got thrown into a leadership role at a young age. And when I was not prepared, I failed a lot, and I learned a lot, and I got better eventually. And I'm I have the same mentality with my directors today. It's look, you're new leaders. You're going to have to do this. There's going to be pain, but you'll get through that, and you'll be way better on the other side, and the organization will be better for it.
Yeah, Karl, throwing, people into the fire is actually empowering, because because every human being is extremely, extremely special. There's not a single human being in this world that doesn't have these special gifts, right? So when you put them in that situation, you empower them, the ones that start seeing that, the ones that start feeling that role and they start taking action, that leadership, those qualities start coming out right? And then you start seeing
Yep.
it, and they start moving up. You start seeing them move up, right? But when you don't empower them, if you kind of micromanage, it actually devalues them. It kind of disempowers them. So
Absolutely.
I'm a firm believer in that. That's a great process that you're thinking. Another thing I wanted to mention is the podcast, for example. When I started the podcast, that was my thought process as well, right? Like, I'm getting into this. I love it, getting into it, but how can I leave this for my kids? Like, what am I doing it for, right?
Yep.
Like, if something happens to me, then what will be the return, for example? So what came to mind is that if you love it and there's passion in it and you're doing it from the place of passion, that stuff you don't want to concern with, because you're doing it as a passion thing, right? Not as a business thing. Yeah, it helps business, right? But when you're doing it,
Yep.
even when you kind of step away, if you enjoy it, like if it's something that you like, you'll probably do it even regardless. Like, it doesn't take much time, out of a week. It can be done very in a relaxed manner, but it just depends on that passion level, right? Like, is this something that you
Right.
enjoy, right? And you mentioned public speaking, so that way that could be something that you do as a hobby, for example, even if you step away. But yeah, definitely utilize that voice. And
I appreciate that.
yeah. Do you do anything on the audio side of things, like for people, the blogs, for example? Do you actually produce
Yeah.
scripts? Yeah.
It's a good question. We don't right now. I know a couple of our clients do use podcasts as one of
Okay.
their channels for marketing, and this is something we've been talking about internally a bit too. Now, I'll say that, like, we're very intentional with how we launch new services. We don't just do everything all at once. I believe one of the biggest mistakes service businesses can make is trying to do everything for everybody. So we do one very narrow thing for one very specific type of client. That's it. And that's what's allowed us to be successful and grow and scale so well. Now, that said, as we grow and we hit like a cap of kind of reaching the most, the clients that we realistically can reach, and we're kind of like hitting a slow and steady growth curve, we're going to start looking, and we are looking at like adding other service lines that can help cross-sell things to those existing clients. So for example, podcasting is one that we've talked about, as well as video content is another really interesting one. I would love to get involved in both of those over time, but it is we're very intentional about it. We're just very picky about how far we go into each thing. This year we launched, or we're in the middle of launching a job board to serve our clients. One of the big requests that they have is they love working with us on a contract or freelance, kind of like having these freelance writers work with them, but they need full-time people too. And we don't do that. We don't want to, be a full-time person for them. So giving them access to talent that we have that we have in our network is a huge plus for them. And so that's the thing we're launching this year. Now, that said, next year, I think we'll probably launch another thing. Could be podcasting, could be video, could be something slightly different, but
that's cool.
Yeah, we're really, definitely into that. I mean, I think one of the exciting things about the industry we're in is that it is growing by like 20% a year. It has been for the last 4 years. And so it's a multi-billion-dollar industry that's like tacking on billions every year. And the great opportunity for us is we're already in a leadership position, being one of the very few content providers that works with this audience. And so we could definitely go out there and cross-sell a lot of other stuff to them over time.
That's good. So how do you, for example, with artificial intelligence, right? Like some of these tools out there, like Jarvis, I believe it's called Jarvis or something else.
Yeah.
But they changed it.
Jasper, I think is what they changed
Jasper,
to, right?
They changed it.
Yeah.
Do they?
I'm
Carl,
super
do they have?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I have a lot of thoughts of this. I went through last December and tested 6 or so of those. They're all based on GPT-3, so like they're
I'm curious to learn about that from you.
Like, they're super interesting, but it's also still super nascent, the technology. So there's a couple limitations right now that sort of that are standing in the way, and I think these will get better over time. But I'll just I can throw them out there. So with the super deep technical stuff that we're writing, there often is not much existing content on the particular subject matter. So what can be really tricky for these AI tools, they work off of reading, quote unquote, the existing content on the internet, and then sort of being able to digest it and a little bit sort of understand the context of it, and then spit out something similar when you ask for it. And so that's great for a topic where there's millions of articles already written about it. Like if you wanted to write an article about running shoes, you could absolutely get Jarvis to write you a fairly decent article about running shoes. And it would at least sound like a human wrote it for the most part.
Yeah.
Now, it's not going to be as insightful as, say, a trail runner with 30 years of experience, but it's going to be something. On the other hand, when you want this stuff, these AI tools to write you a deeply technical article about the new Linux kernel release that just happened 2 weeks ago, and how it impacts Kubernetes clusters.
Yes.
Like, no, there's no way. It's not even close. Like it doesn't understand any of that because it's all so new. You're sort of, it doesn't have enough information to pull from, and it's just complex the way that these things tie together. So for now, we're safe. Now, that said, I think I see a future where we use like an AI plus human or a human in the loop sort of flow, where a single writer, let's say, could write more content faster using an AI tool to help with some of the general information, or maybe help form sentences better. One of our big challenges is a lot of our writers are not native English speakers. They're software engineers, but they might live in India, South America, like a lot of people in Africa, like they're all over the world, and they speak enough English and write enough English to be fairly good, but they definitely sound like they're not native American English speakers. And that's, that's fair. So what these AI tools could be doing in the future is taking their sort of like maybe rougher English and helping like form the story and be a little more like cohesive and maybe get a little bit stronger there. And I think that'll be really exciting to see as they progress. So I am super bullish on the tools. I think they'll get there, they'll get better, and they'll be really useful. Right now, they're still in this phase where they have kind of limited use until people really figure out some of the quirks of them.
Did you have the entrepreneur bug growing up?
Yeah, my dad had he's owned his own antique store with a couple of friends for many, many years. So he was an entrepreneur. And I, since college, have kind of tried starting my own business. I think I've had at least a dozen or so side projects that I thought might be the thing that I could do. The first real business to start in the last decade. And none of them really took off. It's interesting, like all those little behind the scenes failures you kind of go through that most people never saw or never know anything about. Yeah. So whenever people tell me like they're like, wanting to know like, oh, how did you make this thing take off and grow so fast? I'm like, well, I tried 12 things that never went anywhere.
Exactly.
And I had a job for 10 years and eventually this came out. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like we have, every success, if you really look at it, is paved by failures.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right. And that's where the lessons are. If you don't take the leap, if you don't take the step if you're afraid to fail, it's not for you, but if you create the courage to go and you're okay and you accept failure as a learning lesson, then it's wonderful entrepreneurship.
Yep. Absolutely. And I'll say that like having a job for 10 years, I worked for small startups. I was the first employee twice, and got to go from zero, this like 2-3 person companies up to 20 and 30 person companies. That was an awesome experience. And I would say that, a lot of people, if they think they're pure entrepreneurs through and through, they never want to have a job. Like joining a really small company is actually a really nice way to see what entrepreneurship is like from the ground. And then you go out on your own and you've learned all these lessons. Like I got to sit in on investor calls where we were, meeting with VCs and people to raise money. And I never would have gotten that if I went and worked at a big Fortune 500 for 10 years. I never would have gotten exposure to like how to make your first sale of something, getting to see that actually happen, like, and hear the salespeople talking about it, hear their meetings. Like that was super helpful for me when I started to do sales and then hire a salesperson. And I had never done any of that. So anyway, all this to say, like, it can be a really good experience, even if it's not your ultimate goal in life.
Yeah. Yeah. No, One thing I have to mention is that I'm grateful that you keep mentioning our brand name in your conversation. So that is that's a great one. Whenever I hear a guest, mention super, it's like yes,
Yep. Yep.
yeah,
Yep. Super.
yeah.
I probably
So
use that word too
yeah.
much, but that's all right.
No, it's
It's a
good.
good place to use
It's
it,
a
right?
perfect place to use it. Yeah. The funny thing is, I use it too. So in the show, I'll always say super important or super this and super that, and I use it so much. Sometimes I feel like I shouldn't be doing it, but I want to be natural. Whatever's coming out, I let it go. So
Right.
yeah. What was I going to ask? Oh yeah, the corporate world. I found that I interview a lot of people, Karl. So I find that the people that have the experience in the corporate side that go into business, their structure sounds a lot more organized.
Sure.
What they talk about their business. Like their divisions and how they structure
Yeah.
their business sounds a lot more organized than the ones that are with business their entire life. I noticed
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I could see that. I think I
Mm.
worked in my internships in college were huge companies. So GE, Siemens. And so the nice thing about that was I kind of got a little bit of exposure to the big corporate world. Now I
Mm.
was not, there for 10 years or anything like that, but like even just the year of internships I did, it gave me a ton of insight into how they break down, big organizations into structures, which actually is, I will say to your point, I do think that's really helpful, especially as
Mm-hmm.
you think about growing. One thing I've always done as a matter of habit, and this is partly to there's some books that are kind of good for this, but like is just to build out our org chart today and then how it should look in 6 or 12 or
Yes.
24 months, and just have
Yeah.
that as like a constant thing in my head of like, where are we building
Mm.
towards and what key hires do we need to make?
Yeah.
Yeah, that it's really helpful, and it helps to clarify to the team. One thing that
Mm-hmm.
because we've grown so fast, we've hired managers and then directors, and having these different levels, it's like sometimes people aren't clear on who they're supposed to be reporting to or asking questions to,
Mm.
and having an org chart that just shows them like, look, this is your direct boss, this is the line you should be going.
Yeah.
It actually, as much as I know entrepreneurs kind of hate that, they always want this like someone want this flat
Mm.
organization where everybody
Mm.
just does their own thing. It's like, it's just not realistic and not what most
Mm.
people want. Most people want clear directives from a boss who gives them feedback and they know they're answering to. And so having that set out is actually really helpful for employees as well.
Yeah. And initially the org chart is usually your own name when you're starting out, right? Every part
Right. Yeah. You're
will have your
on
name.
every box. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway,
But
you kind of start
to say
moving
like,
yourself.
yeah, but even if you just do that, it can be really helpful. So one thing I did early on was I would measure my time. I would track my time, and I'd track the amount of time I spent in marketing, in sales, in writing articles, in editing articles, in hiring people. And I started to like track the time in each category and say, okay, these are the roles I'm doing. And then when one of those roles became a big time sink for me, I started to look at how do I hire somebody to do that role. And so that was like my guide early on for hiring the first employees was, okay, I know I'm spending 10 hours a week writing articles. Is that the highest leverage thing I could do? Or could I take that 10 hours a week and just go do more sales and hire somebody to write? And that's like pretty quickly how I decided to start hiring writers, then editors, then, account managers. And yeah, so it's a really helpful guide. And I think something that a lot of people don't have the discipline to do, but I think it really, it will help you set out your org chart and start to like actually fill in those positions if you think about your time in what you're actually doing.
No, excellent point. Can you share what you feel your innermost superpower is that got you to this point?
Ooh, that's a big one. It's hard to pick one. I think
Top one,
probably
just dig
probably
deep.
the
There's
biggest,
no rush.
yeah. Probably the biggest thing is being unafraid to delegate or to like, get other people to do work for me. One of the things that we talked about this a bit already, but like I remember distinctly the first time I started hiring other writers and they screwed things up and the clients were pissed, and things like that would happen. And I remember it felt terrible, but I also realized that was the pain I needed to go through to figure out how to stop screwing it up. Like I
Yeah,
needed
of
to make
course.
that mistake of hiring, say, the
Mhm,
wrong writer, the wrong editor
mhm,
for a few times before
mhm,
I could get the right one. I could learn how to like define the role. And so I kind of just looked at it as this is painful, but this pain is the learning that I need to go through. And
mhm,
so my ability to delegate and like let go of tasks really easily and not be afraid that they'll not get done, or like that I won't figure out how to delegate them. That's been a
mhm,
huge superpower in unlocking. I mean, it allows me, again, this is why I can take a month off in a small company and I'm not afraid.
mhm,
It's why
mhm.
we have a growing team that solves a lot of its own problems without my input. It's why I don't
Mhm.
have to do sales calls all day, every day. I don't have to talk to our
Good.
clients anymore. Just all this stuff that like generally a lot of entrepreneurs struggle to get out of, even at much
Mhm.
bigger sizes than me.
Karl, I can relate to that for sure because when I'm working with people and with my team, they will come to me, they'll ask, what should I do? I said, what would you do? Right. So they're
Exactly.
used to
I
it
love
now.
that.
Yeah, they know.
Yes.
Yeah, they know that if they come to you, that's what's going to come back. So what do you do?
I do.
Right. And
Yeah, I
then,
do the exact same
yeah,
thing. I tell
yeah. And then
everybody in
yeah,
orientation, yep,
exactly.
I'm not going to answer
Yeah.
your questions. Just be ready.
No, yeah, yeah. And then they say, okay, well, this is an option. This is the pros and cons, and they give you all the answers. I go, okay, so what is it? Like it's so
Yep.
obvious, right? Which way to go? I said this way.
Yep.
I go, yeah. I think that you just did it. I didn't do nothing,
Yeah,
right?
you
Kind
just
of
did
thing.
it.
So, yeah, he just did it. So it's very empowering, and people love that.
Definitely.
Initially, they don't like
Oh
it.
yeah.
They kind of push back and say, hey, my job is not to think, kind of. For
Yeah.
example,
Well,
they
I
just
think the
want you to
best people love
direction,
it.
right? So,
Yeah, yeah. Like I
yes,
think
yeah,
I would argue that there might be people who always hate that, but they probably aren't the
yeah,
right people to hire regardless. So
yeah,
what I
true,
always look for is like people who are super uncomfortable with that, never get how to make their own decisions and just,
yeah,
take initiative. They're going to get weeded
yeah,
out pretty quickly in a small company like
yeah,
this. We don't have a lot of room
yeah,
for those kind of people, but
yeah,
the people who embrace it and love it and thrive in that environment,
yeah,
it keeps them super engaged. It keeps them like around longer.
yeah,
They are excited by every day because they get to make their
yeah,
own decisions and empower
yeah.
themselves. Yeah, I'm a huge fan. There's a book called The
Jasper,
Decision Maker that I
yeah,
remember distinctly reading it. It's kind of a parable business book about exactly that. It's like, how can you, as a manager, how
mm,
can you basically delegate decisions down to everybody at the front lines as much as possible?
yeah,
And
that's
the
awesome.
empowerment that leads to, and like as long as you have the right incentives aligning everything, and you have the right like sort of information, you're giving them enough information to make good decisions. There's no reason that frontline people or middle managers can't make a lot of the important decisions that in poorly run organizations bubble all the way up to the executives.
Mm. No, for sure. Karl, man, it's been amazing talking to you, my friend. Like the information, the voice, everything has been great. It's an honor to share your message with everyone, and I appreciate you, taking the time to add value in the public's eye.
Yeah, it's great to be here. You're a super host, and this is a super
Thank you.
podcast. So I am
Oh,
excited
thanks.
to have the opportunity to be on, and can't wait to talk again
Yeah.
soon.
Oh, for sure. Anytime, anything. If you need any help, let me know. Email away. And audience, thank you so much again. Love you guys. Appreciate you guys. Love all the engagement and the messages and the reviews. Um, without you, really, this is nothing, right? We're trying to add value in your lives and trying to give you some pointers and help where you could take that step for you and your family, right? And if you are in business, amplify it. There's so much to be learned here with these wonderful guests. Thank you so much for being part of this show. And Karl, thank you so much. And we'll talk soon.